How reward influences attention. Insights from Neuroscience. Imagine your brain is a nightclub bouncer deciding who gets in first, the flashy VIP with a fat tip or the quiet guest who just wants a drink. That split-second choice, who grabs your attention and who gets ignored, is the exact drama unfolding inside your head every time a potential reward appears. And here's the kicker. Scientists are only now realizing that the bouncer might be using two entirely different rulebooks. But here's where it gets controversial. What if the classic story that reward always sharpens attention is only half true? What if, under the hood, your brain treats noticing and deciding as two separate games with separate scoreboards? Let's unpack this with a real study that's shaking up neuroscience Twitter. Sridharan Devarajan, Associate Professor at the Center for Neuroscience, Indian Institute of Science, and his PhD student, Ankita Sengupta, decided to chase this mystery down. Their paper, freshly published in PLOS Biology, doesn't just add another brick to the wall of knowledge. It questions the mortar holding the old wall together. The big idea: reward doesn't simply turbocharge attention like nitrous in a race car. Instead, it can twist two distinct dials. One, labeled sensitivity, how clearly you see the prize, and another, labeled bias, how eager you are to reach for it. Until now, most experiments mashed those dials together, so we couldn't tell which knob reward was actually turning. So how do you tease the knobs apart? Sridharan's team built a clever two-part video game for 24 volunteers. Picture two fuzzy striped patches, called Gabor patches, flashing on a screen. In round 1, the game asked, did either patch change orientation? Crucially, one side always paid a fixed reward, while the other side dangled a jackpot that could swing higher or lower. Participants quickly learned to zoom their mental spotlight onto the potentially juicier side, improving their ability to detect tiny orientation shifts. Eye tracking showed their gaze magnetically drifting toward the high reward zone, and brain recordings lit up with classic attention signatures. Yet their willingness to shout, "Yes, I saw a change," stayed rock steady. Sensitivity up, bias unchanged. And this is the part most people miss. In round 2, the researchers flipped the script. Now the reward wasn't tied to seeing better. It was tied to saying yes versus no. One side paid more for claiming a change occurred, the other for claiming nothing happened. Suddenly participants grew biased. They'd gamble on yes when the payout was bigger, even if their eyes and early brain waves showed zero extra attention to the actual strikes. In other words, reward rewired their decision threshold without touching their sensory clarity. Bias up, sensitivity untouched. The implications ripple far beyond lab goggles. If sensitivity and bias ride separate neural highways, then disorders like gambling addiction might not be a single traffic jam, but two simultaneous crashes in different parts of the city. Therapies could, in theory, target decision circuits without messing with sensory circuits, or vice versa. Controversial thought. Some researchers argue that attention and diffusion bias are just fancy labels for the same underlying process. This study throws a wrench in that view. Do you buy the two-system story, or do you think the brain is sneakier, merging the streams somewhere we haven't looked yet? Drop your take below. Should we start designing separate training apps, one to sharpen what we notice, another to tame what we choose? Or is the brain too tangled for such neat divisions? Let the debate begin. Unveiling the brain's reward system, how rewards influence attention and decision-making. A groundbreaking study reveals the surprising ways our brains handle rewards, peeling back the layers of attention and decision-making like never before. But here's where it gets controversial. Our brains treat the anticipation of a reward as a two-part process, one that influences our sensitivity to visual cues and another that drives our decisions, all without crossing paths in the brain's attention centers. Imagine the thrill of hunting for the ripest fruit on a tree. Our brains are wired to zero in on the most rewarding targets, but it's not just about focusing our gaze. Researchers at the Indian Institute of Science, IISc, wanted to know how the brain juggles the excitement of a potential reward. They used cutting-edge eye tracking and EEG technology to monitor participants as they played a visual game with a twist. In this game, participants had to spot subtle changes on a screen. If they succeeded, they were rewarded.
But here's the kicker. The rewards weren't evenly distributed. One side of the screen promised more points than the other, and over time, the participants became more sensitive to changes on the side that promised a bigger payoff. But here's the twist. When the participants were asked to decide whether a change had occurred based on the reward, their brain activity didn't show the typical signs of heightened attention. It's as if the brain's attention center was only listening when the stakes were high for seeing, not for deciding. These findings could have profound implications for understanding addiction and impulsivity. If we can pinpoint how the brain processes rewards, we might be able to develop better treatments for gambling, addiction, and other disorders where reward and decision-making go awry. And this is the part most people miss. The brain's reward system is more complex than we thought. It's not just about seeing the prize, it's about deciding to go for it. The two processes are separate, and they're influenced by different parts of the brain. So the next time you're tempted by a shiny object, remember, your brain is working overtime, juggling the thrill of the reward with the decision to act. But what does this mean for us as individuals? Are we more susceptible to rewards than we think? And how can we harness this knowledge to make better choices? The debate is just beginning, and we want to hear your thoughts. Join the conversation in the comments below. How rewards shape our focus and decisions. Insights from IISc research. Rewards powerfully influence how we focus our attention and make decisions. But intriguingly, these effects operate through separate brain mechanisms. An insight uncovered by research at the Indian Institute of Science, IISc. Imagine watching animals in the wild expertly pick the ripest fruits from a tree without hesitation. This instinctive behavior, driven by the search for the most rewarding options, reveals fundamental truths about how attention and decision-making function in the brain. But here's where it gets controversial. While we know rewards sharpen focus and speed up reactions, the precise brain processes behind this have remained somewhat elusive. Taking on this challenge, Sridharan Devarajan, associate professor at IISc's Center for Neuroscience, alongside his doctoral student Ankita Sengupta, embarked on a journey to dissect how expectations of rewards shape attention. Their findings, recently published in PLOS Biology, overturn the simplistic notion that attention is a single, unified process. Instead, they demonstrate that rewards influence attention through two distinct pathways. It's well known that when a reward is at stake, people tend to perform better, quicker, and more accurately on tasks. However, prior research often combined two crucial aspects of attention into one: sensitivity, which is the ability to perceive subtle changes, and bias, meaning the predisposition toward making a particular choice. Devarajan and Sengupta aim to tease apart these threads to see exactly how rewards affect each independently. To achieve this, they designed a sophisticated two-phase cognitive experiment involving 24 volunteers. In the first phase, focused on sensitivity, participants observed two flickering striped patterns, also known as Gabor patches, and had to identify if either pattern switched direction. Correct detection earned them monetary rewards. But these rewards were unevenly distributed. One side offered higher potential payouts than the other. Over repeated trials, participants instinctively honed in on the more lucrative side, improving their sensitivity there. Surprisingly, even as their visual attention sharpened, their decision-making tendencies, or bias, remained unchanged. In other words, they got better at spotting the change, but didn't alter their readiness to choose one response over another. Then came the second phase, where the experiment flipped the rules. Now, rewards were tied to the type of answer. Whether saying yes or no would yield more money, testing participants' biases in decision-making. This time, participants showed a clear preference toward the more rewarding choice. Yet, intriguingly, Their actual visual attention and brain activity in sensory regions did not shift. Sengupta notes, it was unexpected to find no distinct signals in the brain's attentional centers when bias changed, challenging assumptions about how intertwined attention and decision-making truly are. By tracking eye movements alongside neural signals, the researchers revealed a fundamental divergence in how sensitivity and bias respond to rewards. Sensitivity is deeply tied to the brain's sensory attention networks, which help us process incoming information, whereas bias aligns more closely with higher-order brain areas responsible for making choices. This discovery has far-reaching consequences beyond the laboratory. Devarajan explains, understanding these separate pathways could be key to unraveling why some people engage in risky, reward-driven behaviors, like gambling or addiction. It offers critical insights that might improve therapeutic strategies and diagnostic methods. In essence, just as a monkey instinctively focuses on the ripest fruit by sharpening its senses, humans continuously weigh their options by either enhancing perception or steering decisions. What this study compellingly shows is that the processes of looking and acting in response to rewards are far more distinct than we previously believed. Do you think this separation could reshape how we address behavioral issues linked to reward? Share your thoughts and join the conversation.